Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHD and welcome to episode 42 of the ChazzaHDF1 podcast, where today of course we're going to be previewing the next Grand Prix in 2019, the 2019 German Grand Prix at Hockenheim. And after the classic and truly epic race we had at Silverstone, I think the chances of another great race are pretty good, because at Hockenheim there are plenty of places to pass and you can definitely go racing at this circuit. And yeah, today we're going to preview how we think the teams are going to do at Hockenheim. But before I start, of course, hopefully to everyone watching, you're having a very good, what is for me, mid-Saturday afternoon. But also, I just want to say thank you guys very, very much, because I have just ticked over to 2 million all-time views on this channel, meaning that in the last 2 to 2.5 months, we've gained about 1 million views. So thank you guys so much for the support as of late. Really do appreciate it, and hopefully we can just continue and keep pushing towards the goal of 10k subs by the end of the year, which I think we will get, but we need to of course keep pushing for that. Hopefully we keep going and keep getting or keep growing this channel. But yeah, thank you guys so much for that. I really do appreciate it, because the channel right now, as you guys I think can definitely see, the channel right now is booming compared to the amount of subs I do have. So again, thank you guys very much. But now let's get into the podcast. And with me as always is Niblo. And Nib, how you doing, mate? And are you looking forward to this Grand Prix?
Yeah, I am doing well, mate. I hope everyone in the chat is doing well. Also, well, after what has been two very, very good races in Austria and, of course, the British Grand Prix, I'm certainly looking forward to the Hockenheim Grand Prix. Of course, it was a classic last year where, of course, Sebastian Vettel went in the wall after his brilliant pole lap, which I actually rewatched again on Twitter the other day. It popped up on my feed. I sent it to Chaz. What a lap that was. So if we have a qualifying session like that, because it was a good qualifying session as well last year, and a good race, so 3 good races in a row, that would be fantastic. But certainly I'm looking forward to the German Grand Prix.
Absolutely. And I think if you look at the history of this Grand Prix, we normally do get some exciting racing. And I think we will get some again. But let's just head into the teams and preview how we think they are going to do. So let's start off with Mercedes, who, of course, this time last year at the home Grand Prix got a 1-2. And they also did a week ago at Silverstone, got a 1-2 finish. And it's looking good again, I think, for a 1-2 finish at Hockenheim. Now, when it comes to the performance of their car at Hockenheim, it depends on their upgrade, their big upgrade that they're bringing to the Grand Prix. If it works, then I think they're going to, absolutely dominate the Grand Prix. But if it doesn't quite work as much as they want to, or not really work at all, then they are going to be under threat from probably a couple drivers at most, probably one, most likely. But I think their performance at Hockenheim really does come down to whether this big upgrade does work for them. Knowing them, it will work for them, because everything this season just seems to stick for them. So most likely Mercedes, their upgrade is going to work, and they're going to run away with their home Grand Prix. Of course, it's not one of those home Grand Prix for teams where, say, Mercedes are as well supported as Ferrari or even necessarily Red Bull, the Red Bull Ring, but it is their home Grand Prix, and they'll be looking to get another 1-2 finish and another race win at Hockenheim. They've won every race at Hockenheim ever since 2014. The last time they didn't win at Hockenheim was 2012. So they've had great success here, and I think most likely they are probably going to continue that into this Grand Prix. Nib, for Mercedes, as I said, because of their big upgrade, if it does work for them, then they probably are going to run away with this Grand Prix, aren't they?
Yes, well, certainly if it does work, as I think many people would know, that they will absolutely wallop the field. But it's been a very common theme this year when teams have brought upgrades, that it is thrown out how the tyres work, and then the tyres aren't in the right operating window, which is what Mercedes have been oh so good at so far this season, is keeping their tyres in the perfect window in every single condition, basically. So who knows if that upgrade sort of messes with that, who knows? They might not be as strong as we predict, but it is Mercedes after all. It's not Renault, it's not Ferrari, it's not even Red Bull to a certain extent. They've struggled until they brought a new front wing at Austria. So I still think that Mercedes is going to be the fastest team. Mercedes are great. They're dominant. They had a great result in Silverstone as we expected. I mean, Ferrari and Red Bull were there. They were closer, um, but still not good enough. Still nowhere near Mercedes in the race. That's where Mercedes are truly the best. And yeah, I wouldn't expect anything else really from the next Grand Prix in Hockenheim. Once again expect a 1-2 finish. The last sector, um, I think they'll be very strong. Fast flowing corners, along with Red Bull, of course, yeah, with Max Verstappen and hopefully Pierre Gasly off the back of his great performance. But Mercedes, I think they will get pole. I'm not too sure how much though, because Ferrari and Red Bull really have closed the gap a little bit to Mercedes. But if this upgrade does work, I'd expect them to be on pole quite comfortably by about 3 to 4 tenths of a second.
Yeah, I think, yeah, they are definitely the favourites for pole and the race win. We'll get into our predictions later on, but yeah, definitely, if you're going to go for a team for sure who's going to be, at the front of the grid, you would have to go for Mercedes because I think they just have a good enough car where it matters at this circuit to be, right up there at the top. But we are now going to go on to Ferrari. If you are a Sebastian Vettel or Ferrari fan, you might not want to look at this photo. And there
Oh
you go.
no!
Of course, that is what happened with Sebastian last year, leading the race, leading the championship at the time, and it all fell away. And ever since then, you have to say Sebastian has not recovered. He's made countless mistakes. His speed has got worse. He hasn't produced as many great performances. And I think his current form can be directly connected back to this era 1 year ago. And I think also for Ferrari, they just haven't really recovered since this era. But when it comes to, Ferrari at Hockenheim, I don't think they're going to be that good. I think in qualifying, they could get into the top three, but on race day, because they're struggling so much again with tyre wear, as we saw at Silverstone, I just don't see how they are going to be, in that top two, top three during the race. I just don't see it. I don't think they have a good enough car for that. I don't think Ferrari right now are in a good enough position at this type of circuit to be competitive. And again, if you look at the history of this circuit, last year, I think they did have the faster car than Mercedes, but last year Ferrari had a much better car. But Hockenheim hasn't been the greatest track for them. In the past few, times we've come to Hockenheim, the last time they won this race was 2012, and that was mostly because of Fernando Alonso's heroics in the wet and then his great drive in the dry to keep Jenson Button and Sebastian Vettel at bay. So it's not the greatest circuit for Ferrari, and I don't see Ferrari really contending for a race win this week, or not this weekend, next weekend at Hockenheim. I just don't see it because, especially in that final sector, their car's not good enough. It really is not good enough. And as the lap goes on, the track requires more aerodynamic grip again as the lap goes on. So as the lap goes on, the Ferrari car will just get worse and worse. So I think for Ferrari at Hockenheim, the best they can do in quali is probably get into the top three, most likely in third place. But on race day, I don't see how Ferrari have that successful of a Grand Prix nib. For Ferrari, do you think they're going to be any better than Silverstone, or the same, or worse?
I think they'll be about the same, if I'm perfectly honest. I think they'll be a couple tenths off Mercedes in qualifying. Um, I think we're forgetting a little bit about how big the massive Mercedes straight is. In sector two, that is very long. Of course, Ferrari make up a good amount of time in that part of the track, although they don't seem to quite have the advantage in a straight line, or certainly as big as of an advantage in a straight line as what they did early in this season. Seems as if that Mercedes engine upgrade that they brought to the Canadian Grand Prix really did help Mercedes close the gap to Ferrari in the engine department there. So I think that Ferrari, they'll have a promising qualifying. Once again, it looks like Leclerc could have got pole in Silverstone. I think they'll once again have a promising qualifying, but then when it comes to Q3 and when it matters, they won't be quick enough. And then at the start, of course, they've got to stay out of trouble. I think that at the start of the Grand Prix, Ferrari actually aren't awful. But as the race goes on, then the car, because it's set up for higher fuel, isn't very good when there's no fuel in the car. So they really do struggle with the balance of the car throughout a Grand Prix and when the car loses all of the fuel in the car. So as the race goes on, I think Ferrari will get worse. But I do still think that they could get a podium, probably with Charles Leclerc because he really has been outperforming Sebastian Vettel the last few races, and at Silverstone he was much better than Sebastian Vettel. Vettel had an absolute mare at at the British Grand Prix, and Vettel is usually very good at Silverstone. Um, so for Ferrari, of course, they don't want a repeat of last year. I mean, if Sebastian Vettel could repeat his pole lap from last year, that'd be fantastic for Ferrari. But yeah, I think the best that they're looking at for is probably a podium for the German Grand Prix.
Yeah, I think the best they could hope for was a podium and not really compete for the win because again, I just don't think they have quite enough at this type of circuit. But now let's move on to Red Bull Racing, who you have to say have definitely, until we see what Mercedes have done with their new upgrade, Red Bull have made the biggest upgrade out of any of the top three teams ever since the Austrian Grand Prix, where they brought a new front wing and they look as though they're about half a second quicker / closer to the top of the timesheets than they were in the first, 6 or 7 races. So looking good for Red Bull. And if this race was taking place, say, 2 weeks ago, where Mercedes haven't brought their big upgrade, I think with Max Verstappen, Red Bull would be very competitive and probably wouldn't be far off going for the race win. But as we said earlier, because Mercedes are bringing that upgrade and because normally for them, they will improve. We don't know how much by, but they are probably going to improve from it because that's just how great of a team Mercedes are. That might affect Red Bull's ability with Max Verstappen to go for a possible race victory if it is possible. For Pierre Gasly, of course at Silverstone he was great and I'm not denying that, but let's be honest and let's come back down to reality. It was only one Grand Prix. It doesn't mean that he's going to be great at Hockenheim, great at Hungary. It's one Grand Prix. So let's wait and see, whether he can do it at, this Grand Prix, the next one, and then after the summer break. Because if he can, then yeah, he'll start proving me wrong. But if he goes straight back to how he was, then he hasn't proved me wrong at all. What Gasly needs to do, if he wants to stay at Red Bull, is do what he did at Silverstone on a consistent basis. If he does that, then he'll be fine. But I'm yet to see with Gasly that he can, during his entire career, consistently keep up a good amount of performance and pace. So we'll see that at Hockenheim. Hopefully he does keep it up because I want to see both Red Bulls in there, like at Silverstone with the Ferraris. But we'll see, of course, with him. Nib, for Red Bull. With Max Verstappen, do you think they can go for the win if they are a bit closer than, say, normal? And for Gasly, do you think he will continue his great performance, or do you think he'll just come crashing back down to how he was in France and Austria?
Oh, doom and gloom about Gasly. I like it. But um, of course, with Verstappen, I really do think that I think he has a serious chance of doing very well this weekend. Maybe not so in qualifying, although we did see in Silverstone they're only 2 tenths off pole. So who knows? Once again, always double guessing what I'm thinking with a bit of logic. That's nice to do. Um, but yeah, I think Red Bull will be very strong in the race. We've seen that once again. They were much faster than Ferrari in the race at Silverstone. They just could not get past Charles Leclerc quickly enough. Sorry, I have to burp here in a minute. Yep, pardon me. Apologies for that. Um, but I really do think that in the race, if they're able to clear Ferrari a little bit quicker, because I do think they will qualify behind Ferrari, that if they clear Ferrari quick enough, which they should do because the straight is very long and they should be able to get past the Ferrari quite comfortably with the slipstream and the DRS and all of the ERS in the world. So I think that they can really put up a fight to Mercedes in the Grand Prix. It's supposed to be relatively hot. I think supposed to be at 30 degrees next weekend for the Grand Prix. So relatively hot, not too warm, of course. So just a nice mild summer day, of course, for Europe. Um, but I think they really can do a good job. Red Bull are good on their tires. Max Verstappen is especially good on these tires, and I really do hope that Pierre Gasly continues to prove Chazza wrong, because then we can all come at Chazza with our pitchforks and say you were wrong about Gasly, even though
Yeah.
everyone agreed after France. Yes, forget that. Um, but no, I really do hope that Gasly has a good race. You know, he's getting a lot of stick. Horner even told him to do the Control Alt Delete, and he certainly did that heading into Silverstone because it was a great performance by Gasly. He was quick all weekend long. It wasn't only qualifying the race; he was quick in practice as well. So really hopeful for a Pierre Gasly's performance at Hockenheim, and I really do hope he does well. But I really do think that Red Bull once again are going to be a dark horse in the race if they can get past Ferrari quick enough.
I will say with Gasly, I am willing to be proven wrong, and if he does consistently, improve like he did at Silverstone, then I will absolutely admit I'm wrong. But I just want to wait and see. But yeah, I can't wait for myself to be proven wrong on that and see people saying, "Oh, you're wrong, you're wrong." After that video I made about Pierre Gasly, which is doing very well, it's on 53k about why I think he should be dropped. And my opinion to that still remains. I still think he should be dropped for 2020. And I think that that'll be my opinion until I see new evidence that suggests that he should stay. But we'll see at Hockenheim.
What if he wins?
Oh dear. If he wins and absolutely earns it, then I'd probably have to say yeah, he'd have to stay. I would. It depends though on how he
Not
wins.
closed-minded. He's open-minded. It's good people.
It'd have to depend on how he wins. If he, if he qualifies, say 5th, and all of the top 4 take each other out turn 1, then I'm not gonna say, oh, great performance, because it wasn't exactly hard for him to get into the lead. But
I mean, hey, Stephen Bradbury won a gold medal because everyone crashed into each other.
yeah, so we'll see.
Still a gold medal.
We'll see. Right, before we go on to the midfield, though, I just want to come to everyone on the chat for, say, 5 minutes or so to get your thoughts as to, what do you think will happen with Mercedes Ferrari Red Bull at Hockenheim? Let us know in the live chat in the comments, and we'll respond to your comments in just a moment. I just want to say, though, don't forget to subscribe for more podcast episodes like this, because every time we are in between a race, we do a podcast previewing the next Grand Prix in 2019. So make sure to subscribe for that, bottom right of the screen. You can do it right there, or just go to my homepage, subscribe and hit the notifications bell, and also smash the like button if you want to see these podcast episodes continue. But now we'll get on to some comments, and then we'll get to the midfield in just a moment. Let me find some comments here. Mysterious Chris, what do you think of Formula One adding possibly or going back to refueling? If people don't know, Jean Todt apparently has asked the teams to reconsider refueling for 2021. Now, I wouldn't go back to refueling. I see why people would, but I personally wouldn't. But can I just say, it is very funny that there's plenty of people that have come out against refueling, but these are the same people, not everyone, but a lot of these people, the same people that want to see, cars and teams pushing all the time during a race, but don't want to see the return of refueling. Well, all I'll say is, if you want to see the, teams and drivers pushing 100% during a Grand Prix, the best way to do that is to bring back refueling. But I personally don't think you need to see drivers and teams pushing 100%, during a Grand Prix to have a great race, because in the last couple of years, we haven't had any refueling, and Formula One is very conservative in how, the teams and drivers run their races, and we've had plenty of great races, so I don't think necessarily that matters in terms of drivers pushing all the time. But if there's people out there that want to see that, then refueling is for you. But Nib, what do you think about refueling? I personally also, I never watched Formula One live when there was refueling. Nib, you did. So what do you think about a possible return? Yes or no?
I don't want to see the return of refueling, mainly because it's very dangerous. It
Yeah.
is hugely, hugely dangerous. We see Formula One teams will do every little thing they possibly can to make a pit stop quicker. For Christ's sake, what's Mark Presley, the former McLaren engineer,
Hmm.
he was saying, or mechanic, sorry, was saying that they had a stethoscope on the fuel pump to hear that when it would actually, or on one of the things to hear when it would stop, so they could gain about half a second in the pit stop, so they could actually hear when the fuel stopped coming out the thing, so then they could pull out earlier. Like, F1 teams will go to every single length they can to gain any time possible. And I watch V8 Supercars, which is Australia's like best motorsport that we have here, and they have refueling, and it'll happen about once or twice a season that there'll be a fire in the pit lane,
Hmm.
and it's just not nice to see. It still happens. You can make it as safe as you want, but it's sometimes mistakes are made. We are human, and and there'll be a fire. And of course, we've seen awful instances in the past where there's been fire, and I don't want to see that again. And also because during the refueling era, a lot of the overtakes happened during um during the pit stops. A lot of the
Hmm.
overtakes was during the pit stops it because that's just how it worked. Like, of course, if you go and pit first, you had a disadvantage because you'd have more fuel on board, whereas the person who stayed out the extra lap doing the overcut would actually have the benefit, and then all of the advantage would be in the pit lane. They'd be overtaking the pit lane. At least with the pit stops here and the overcuts and undercuts, it's just from the tires, and then you actually still there. But with the fuel, it was very different. And then also in 2009, where you used to have to do your Q3 time with the race fuel that you were starting on, it just kind of ruined things because you weren't actually seeing the true potential, the true pace of the car. So if they were to come back with that sort of rule, I really wouldn't like it at all. But yeah, I really don't want to see refueling return to Formula One.
No, I don't think we should. Also, funny with refueling, because I've been in the last day or so, whilst I've been editing videos for next week and so on, I'll get onto that later on. I was watching my F1 2009 season review DVD, the part 2 of it, and you have the Kovalainen and Raikkonen fire in Brazil. That was the penultimate race of refueling, and that was probably not the worst incident of a fire, but it was terrifying. And Kimi actually, I think, had his eyes burnt because he had his visor open. That just is a great example that refueling is definitely very dangerous. And as Nib said, a lot of the overtaking in the refueling days was during the pit stops. There wasn't real overtaking going on. Basically, refueling caused the races to be qualifying races, where you're just pushing like you do on qualifying laps to try and overcut or undercut, build gaps, minimize gaps, all that. There was no real overtaking going on. Of course, you'd have to overtake a certain driver if he was a lot heavier than you, but there wasn't real racing going on. And also, as Nib said, because you had to qualify on the fuel that you were going to use, it created a lot of fake pole positions, and you would end up having a really quick car, say put a lot of fuel in, then get caught up in the midfield, have an accident, and then they'd be out of the race. But that's because they
Toyota.
they'd put a lot of fuel in their car. So it's not good, refueling. And if you want to see real racing, I don't think refueling is the way, but it depends on what people want at the end of the day. Right, let me find a couple more comments and then we'll get on to the midfield. Shay Go says bring back ground effect. Well, that is coming back for 2021. That's basically been confirmed. Ground effect is back for 2021, and that's great. And Han Solo saying Jos Verstappen in Hockenheim. Yeah, that's the worst incident of a refueling fire, and that was the first year it was brought back in '94. So yeah, refueling, it's not something that we need back in Formula One. It is not something back. And also, a good thing that I've seen is that for 2021 also, Formula One teams have rejected the idea of active suspension. Thank God, because that device made the cars back in 92, 93 way too easy to drive, and it does take the fun out of driving because the drivers aren't really driving the car. They're just pointing it in the direction it needs to go, and the car does it all for them in terms of adjusting as, you know, the lap goes on. So thank God. Go on.
Yeah, thank God. I'll finish that for you. Thank God they've decided to reject that, because everyone's like, oh, we want to make the drivers do more in the car. We want to reduce, driver aids. Oh, let's bring back active suspensions. It blows my mind. Where is the consistency in your thinking process? That is the biggest contradiction you could ever make. Oh, we want to reduce some telemetry. We want to reduce a couple of other things so that the drivers actually have to do more. And then you want to bring back active suspension. I don't get it. Thank Christ they've rejected it. Moving on.
It is great. It is absolutely great. But again, as I was saying, it just makes it way too, comfortable to drive. But also, when it comes to driver aids, that's not the absolute worst driver aid. If they even think about bringing back traction control, I will lose my mind, because that is the driver aid I hate the most with a passion. I absolutely hate traction control. Hate it. Anyway, let's move on from that and the ranting, and now let's get into the midfield. So first off, Renault at Silverstone were actually better than we thought they'd be. We thought they'd be better than Austria, but not, massively, but they actually were quite a bit better. They were right up there with McLaren. You could argue they had a faster car. Them and McLaren were very close. I think Renault probably did have a slightly faster car at Silverstone than the McLaren did. But coming to Hockenheim, can they, keep that up? I think it's really tough to say. I think they can, definitely. But Hockenheim is definitely a different type of track to Silverstone because, for example, the final sector is all about aerodynamic grip, and you have to say the Renault aerodynamically is not exactly the greatest car in that midfield pack. It hasn't looked that great this season, and that really, because of that final sector, that could hurt Renault going into the German Grand Prix. I think Nico Hülkenberg will be good at Hockenheim because he always is. If you look at his history at the track, he's always good at Hockenheim. Ricciardo is not as good at this track as he is others, but still, all right compared to those other circuits, say like Silverstone. So I think Renault, I think they'll be in there, in that top 10, maybe between 8th and 12th, but I don't think necessarily they're going to be as strong as they were at Silverstone, because I just don't see that car being as good at Hockenheim as it was at Silverstone. For Renault Nib, do you think they'll keep up their performance at Silverstone?
Hopefully. hopefully for my man Daniel Ricciardo, he will have another very strong Grand Prix because, of course, he had a great in Silverstone. He has been very good in qualifying this year. Of course, we always knew that he was a very strong qualifier, even back from his Toro Rosso days, where I think he got sixth in 2012 at the Bahrain Grand Prix, I think it was. Yeah, which was a very good performance. And then I think he finished like 14th, or might have even DNF'd in the rest. But it doesn't matter. He's good at qualifying. Um, so I wouldn't be surprised if he outqualifies his teammate Nico Hülkenberg once again. But in the race, yeah, I'm not too sure. I still think the Renault will get points. I don't know if they'll have both cars in the points. I really hope that they can continue, um, you know, being ahead of McLaren because I really want to see this battle for fourth in the constructors heat up. I want to see Renault close that gap so that we can actually have something to talk about in terms of the constructors come towards the end of the season. Because even though, um, what's it called? Renault had both cars in the points last race. Oh, did Hulkenberg get a point in the end?
Yeah,
I can't
P10.
remember if he did. He did. Yeah. McLaren still scored more points. So that was annoying. So hopefully they can have a bit of a better result and gain some points on McLaren because I really do want to see that battle between those two towards the end of the season. But yeah, I'm pretty confident that Renault won't be going massively backwards from where they were at Silverstone. Ricardo talked about in the Thursday press conference at Silverstone that at Austria they went in a different direction with the setup to where Ricardo had liked it to be and where the car had been good over the last couple of races, and they went back to that Silverstone, and it worked. So I wouldn't be too concerned about Renault going backwards at all at Hockenheim. So I think that they will still be very close there with McLaren.
Talking of McLaren, let's just go straight into them. And at Silverstone, even though I think it was a successful weekend, because as Nib said, they still outscored Renault and also outscored Alpha and Toro Rosso, who also appeared in the points. The pace of the car wasn't as good as they were hoping. They were hoping to be clearly, maybe not massively, far ahead of the other midfield teams, but they were hoping to be how they were in France in terms of how quick they were, or even at times in Austria. They were hoping to be very, very quick, but they didn't quite have the speed consistently during the weekend. But again, they got a great result with Carlos Sainz, who did get, you have to say, very lucky with how the safety car came out on lap 20 at Silverstone. It really did help him and McLaren. But I think coming to Hockenheim, I don't think McLaren are going to be as good as they were in the last, couple races that we have seen. I don't think they're going to be dominantly at the front of that midfield pack. They might have, say, in qualifying, the fastest car from the midfield pack, but I don't think it will be dominant. I think it'll be very close with Renault and also Alfa Romeo as well. I think they're going to be very close with those teams. Also, it's a shorter lap at Hockenheim, so we always get a tighter grid in terms of lap times, similar, in a way to Austria. So I think it will be very close at Hockenheim between McLaren, Renault, Alfa, maybe another team. We'll see. But yeah, I think McLaren will still be in that top 10 fighting away as they normally do, with probably Lando Norris the highest McLaren driver, I think, at Hockenheim, even though Carlos Sainz has been very good this season, and he will be very good again. Nib, for McLaren, I think we basically have touched on it. They're going to be right there with Renault in that front of the midfield fight again, aren't they?
Yeah, there's not much that we can really say on Renault and McLaren either than that they're going to be close. They're going to be the two fastest cars in the midfield because they are. Even though Toro Rosso or Alfa Romeo might look good in practice or earlier in Q1 or Q2, at the end of the day, these two teams are still going to have the two fastest cars in the midfield. So once again, with McLaren, I think that they will probably find themselves behind Renault again this weekend, just because I don't think this track does 100% suit their car. I think that they will find themselves just behind Renault. I don't think they're going to be like massively behind Renault. I expect them to be quite close in the start, and then probably Ricardo will be the leading Renault. Ricardo will have a poor start as usual, and one of the McLarens will get past Ricardo, and then there will be another fight all race long between one of the McLarens and Ricardo. So I think that's what will happen. I think um, that McLaren will have a strong car. They'll be quick. Both cars will get into Q3. Um, and then yeah, hopefully a race long battle with Renault. That would be really fun to see, especially after well, we've seen that Daniel Ricciardo just could not get past Carlos Sainz the last about 12 laps of the British Grand Prix. So hopefully we can see some actual overtaking between them, a proper good battle, and hopefully no more slapping people in the bollocks.
Yeah, hopefully no more of that. Carlos, by the way, does have that little upgrade. I think you've seen little upgrade for the German
Absolute
Grand
class,
Prix.
that.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. But yeah, hopefully McLaren and Renault close as ever. And now let's get into the last four midfield teams. So Alpha at Silverstone were a bit weird. At times they were quick, other times slow. They were a bit inconsistent, but at the end of the day, Kimi Raikkonen put in a great performance to get P8. Giovinazzi, even though he did very well in qualifying at Silverstone, he fell back massively, and then his drive shaft failed, I believe, at the final chicane at Silverstone. So that was a shame for him. But going into Hockenheim, I think definitely with Kimi Raikkonen, they're going to be good, because Kimi, if you look at this circuit with him, normally Kimi Raikkonen is always there or thereabouts in whatever battle he is fighting in. So I think Kimi will be definitely there for the Renaults and McLarens to, think about and to fight with. For Giovinazzi, hopefully he can continue his heroics when it comes to qualifying in terms of out-qualifying Kimi Raikkonen, which is great for him. But one thing I do want to say, even though I have started praising Antonio as of late, I just want to say, I know he had a reliability issue at Silverstone, but if you look at this season, he does have to improve his race pace, because at times he has had very good qualifying pace, but when it comes to the races, he does tend to fall back, and I think that does come down to consistency. I don't think he quite has the consistency with his own driving, and I don't think he's able necessarily to keep up a good amount of speed for a consistent amount of time like Kimi Raikkonen is. Of course, Kimi is great at that and is, very, very experienced compared to Antonio, but I think I would like to see Antonio improve his consistency and his race pace, because if he can, then, it gives the Alfa Romeo team another car to possibly nick a point, which is basically what Alfa are doing right now. They're just nicking a point here or there to continue in P6 in the Constructors, where they're most likely going to finish at the end of 2019. But yeah, Alfa, I think, will be, say, between P9 and P13. At best, I think they'll sneak into the top 10. I don't think they're going to be at the front of the midfield at all. But yeah, at best, P9, P10, I think is the best they can hope for. Nib, for Alpha, do you think they can get in there for a top 10? Or do you think that most likely they're going to be, on the outside looking in and be a bit behind, Renault and McLaren?
I think that Alpha. Sorry, I've got a burp again. Apologies, everyone. There we go. Right. I think that Alpha will probably be on the outside looking in. As I said before, I don't really see many teams challenging Renault or McLaren for points in the midfield. But who knows? There is usually a team that sneaks into the points. Who knows? One of the McLarens or one of the Renaults could have a bit of a bad race, and it's between that Alpha, the Toro Rosso. Who knows? Even the Racing Point, which we'll get onto very shortly, they could, sneak around for that point. And just touching on Giovinazzi, yes, he has been very quick in qualifying, but often, many times, his good actual qualifying, especially in France, then actually cost him in the race because he had to start in the soft tyre, whereas he needed to kind of start in the medium tyre in that race. So that was quite unfortunate for Antonio in that scenario. But you're absolutely right. And in his first season, I actually think he's done a very good job, especially considering his teammate is, after all, Kimi Raikkonen. But who knows if Alpha do bring any upgrades? I'm not sure if they are bringing any upgrades um, to Hockenheim. I think that they could potentially move forward a little bit. I think that at Silverstone they were a little bit underwhelming. They weren't quite as good as what we thought they were maybe going to be, especially after they had that strong performance in Austria. So hopefully Alpha, well, I'm sure they'll be hoping to bounce back with a very strong performance at the German Grand Prix next weekend.
Absolutely. But now let's go on to the next team, Haas. We'll quickly move over Haas because, it's just rinse and repeat with them. They'll do okay in qualifying. They'll be awful in the race. There's nothing really more to talk about. But I will say that there has been some interesting developments with Haas when it comes to sponsorship, which we will get onto later on. But yeah, Haas, in terms of pace at Hockenheim, I think Haas, yeah, they're going to be terrible, most likely. Probably going to be at the back of the midfield. Next up, Toro Rosso, who were a bit better than we thought they'd be at Silverstone. They were probably a step better at Silverstone than they were expecting, or that I was expecting. Albon was in the points for a long time, then fell out because of some kind of reliability issue, I think. And Kvyat was, well, for me at Silverstone, the driver of the day, because he went from P17 to P9, pulled off some good overtakes to get up there, and if there was more laps remaining, I think he probably would have beat Kimi Raikkonen to 8th place. So Kvyat still looking good in 2019. Coming to Hockenheim, I think Toro Rosso are probably going to be the same as what they were at Silverstone, maybe slightly better. I think they're going to be around Alpha on the outside looking in compared to Renault and McLaren, but definitely do not count them out for a points finish. They could easily nick a point at the end of the German Grand Prix. They absolutely could, because I think they have a just about a quick enough car. If some other drivers have issues, they have just about a quick enough car to, get in there and get a point. For Toro Rosso, Neb, do you think they have took a step forward or not?
I think it might have been just a little bit track dependent on their performance, perhaps much like it was with Alfa Romeo at Austria, although they did bring upgrades which would seem to suggest that that was the reason for them to improve. Sorry, pardon me. Once again, I can't stop burping, which is very annoying. But Toro Rosso, I do think that they'll have a pretty good performance at Hockenheim. I think they'll probably be one of the well, out of the teams that aren't McLaren and Renault, I think that they will probably be one of the quicker ones, or certainly the quickest one, actually. I think that they could sneak a point, as I said, along with Alpha. They're one of those teams who could just nick a point if everything doesn't go oh so smoothly. And the Toro Rosso is usually pretty good on their tyres. And if tyre wear does become a factor, of course, with the warmer temperatures predicted for Hockenheim next weekend, they could just sneak in a point. So I think that for Kvyat, he had a good race, of course, in at Silverstone. He had a good qualifying. Did he have a good qualifying? Was that Albon?
It was
That was
Albon,
Albon, wasn't it?
yeah.
It was Albon. Yeah, Kvyat actually had quite a disappointing um, qualifying, but then in the race, it was Kvyat who scored the points, was it not?
Yeah, P9.
I'm awful at remembering. I can't remember anything. My memory has gone to absolute Narnia as of late. But yeah, I think that of course Kvyat had a good race, and I think that we might see that again. We might see one of them, get that kind of curse if you're a midfield team of starting on those used tires from Q2 at the start of the Grand Prix, and then that sort of compromising your race, and then the other teammate who's on fresh tires at the start of the Grand Prix, get a better result than you. So I think that once again could happen once again for Toro Rosso, but I do expect them to be about the same as where they were at Silverstone for the German Grand Prix.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally is Racing Point. Now, of course, in the last few races, Racing Point have been poor. On race day, they've improved. The race pace of the car is actually quite good, but the car generally is lacking grip. But now, when we come to Hockenheim, Racing Point are bringing basically a B spec car, a completely new car, so many upgrades, and basically they're hoping that this new car gives them, say, enough pace to be competing with teams like Alfa Romeo. That's where they want to be. They want to be competing with Alfa Romeo, probably at least. I don't think they'll be expecting to be there with Renault and McLaren. That's too unrealistic. But say compete with Alfa, that'd be a good position for them to aim for. Now, if this upgrade does work, I think you will see it work at this Grand Prix. I don't think it will take time to show like it did with McLaren, for example, where their upgrades did take a couple races to really show how good it was. I think you'll see immediately with Racing Point at Hockenheim whether their car, with all the new parts, has improved. But I will say, if it doesn't make a good enough difference and they're still around Haas, then I think Racing Point should basically use this B spec car as kind of a test car for 2020, because if it doesn't go to plan, this new car, then they are most likely going to finish at the back of the midfield, because even though Haas are very bad at the moment, I think there's a better chance of Haas, getting a point than Racing Point, because Haas do tend some of the time to start in a very good position to go and get that kind of result. Racing Point just at the moment start way too far back. So if they don't, if this car doesn't work for them, then they've got to start focusing on 2020, because they can't start, bringing big upgrades to, Suzuka or Kota, because that's too late in the season and that's too close to 2020 to start bringing upgrades that you should be dedicating to 2020. So this has to work for them. If it doesn't, I think they're basically done for this season. And I think they'll probably give up on the car straight away and use the B spec car as a test bed for 2020, which is probably a good thing for them. Hopefully it does work for them, because they're a very good team. They've been doing very well considering the lack of pace in their car. And I think it would be great to see Racing Point back in there, maybe not in the top 10, but around Alfa Romeo. It'd be great to see that. Nib, of course, we don't know how their car is going to do with the new upgrades, but do you think that it'll work for them or not?
Yes, I do. And I really do hope that it does work for Racing Point, because this is really the first time that we get to see how the new money that has been injected from Daddy Stroll, or of course Lawrence Stroll. I'd much prefer him call him Lawrence Stroll. Calling him Lawrence Stroll, please. Um, this is really the first time they're going to see how this money is affecting this team. This is at the start of the season. They didn't the money hadn't come in. It hadn't been there long enough for them to really have a good start to the season. Of course, they haven't had pretty much any upgrades at all up until now. Where of course they bring this beast Becar, and of course they've been doing this for a number of years now. Famously, I think it was 2015 when they brought the crocodile front wing, the front nose cone, where it's got the kind of crocodile, the two nostrils there. So I think that this will work, and I hope it does work for Racing Point. I hope it does, because there are a lot of great people at that team. It's a very small team at the end of the day, and I think that they deserve to have a bit of a better car. Of course, Sergio Perez certainly does deserve to have a bit of a better car. And who knows? Maybe with a new car, we get a new Lance Stroll and he can get out of Q1. That would be fantastic. And I think we'd have a celebration on stream if he were to get out of Q1. I think we'd all go ballistic and would be very, very pleased for the man, because, as much as we criticize him and that, if he starts to improve his qualifying, I've said this for a number of months now, if he improves his qualifying, we've seen time and time again in race, he is a good driver. He makes great starts. He's very good in the race. But it's always his qualifying that lets him down. He can become a very solid midfield driver if he improves his qualifying, and hopefully, this new upgrade, the B spec Racing Point, is the catalyst to Lance Stroll's improvement. So I hope that Racing Point do have a positive and very strong German Grand Prix.
Yeah, hopefully it works for them. And also, as you said, hopefully for Stroll it works, because it would be great to see him higher up the grid and use that great race pace he normally does have in a better position. Say from, I don't know, instead of P18, P12 or P13. It'd be a lot better to see him in that position, see how really great he can be on a race day, rather than starting basically back with the Williamses. And talking to Williams, of course, they're going to be at the very back. I will say, though, again, shout out to Russell for a great performance at Silverstone. He was comfortably better than Kubica in qualifying, I think half a second quicker, and was only about 10 seconds behind Stroll, I think, in the race. I think Stroll pitted an extra time, but still, that's very, very good. So Russell, you have to say at the moment, is putting in some great performances, but of course Williams, they're still way too far behind, and they'll be at the back. But now, and I want you guys as well to get involved in doing this, let's now get into our predictions, our early predictions for qualifying in the race at Hockenheim. Again, make sure to put yours in the comments section or the live chat, and we'll read out as many as we can before we go into another topic, before we get into the Q&A part of this stream. So make sure to put it in the chat and we'll read out as many as we can. But I will go first and start off, of course, with qualifying. And in qualifying, I'm going to go for Valtteri Bottas on pole position, because Valtteri this season, if you actually look at qualifying, has been just as good as Lewis Hamilton. He really has. He's been very, very good, and I think he will continue that. And I think, even though he did lose at Silverstone, I think he will continue that form, and I don't think he'll be too disappointed, because he did put up a very good fight against Lewis Hamilton. And also, let's not forget, even though Hamilton, I think, eventually would have beat him in the race, Bottas did beat him in a, wheel-to-wheel battle. He did. He got past, but then got past him again. So I think Valtteri is definitely more on an upturn of form at the moment compared to how he was after, France and Austria. So Valtteri will be on pole. And also, Valtteri is very good at Hockenheim. Very, very good at this circuit. He loves this circuit. Lewis Hamilton will be second. Very, very close behind. And then in third place in qualifying, I'm going to go for Max Verstappen, because I don't think the Red Bull is going to be too bad at Hockenheim in qualifying. And as you said, Nib, they were only 2/10 off pole at Silverstone, and at Hockenheim, I think this circuit suits the Red Bull car better than Silverstone. Not massively, but I think it suits it better. So I think Max Verstappen will be P3 on the grid with that incredible lap as he normally does. And then probably after that, will probably be Leclerc, Vettel and Gasly. But then in the race, this is a bold prediction, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for Max Verstappen to win the 2019 German Grand Prix, because I think the Red Bull car on race day will be very quick. And as we've seen as of late, when it comes to race pace, Max Verstappen is incredible at the moment. And of course, so is the Red Bull car. And I think he will find some way to beat those two Mercedes drivers, because I think Bottas and Hamilton, maybe not as much as Silverstone, but they are going to be very close on track, and they're going to be fighting for position, and that's going to cause Max to be, lurking in their mirrors for the first stint, and then somehow, some way, he will, I think, get the race win, and I think he will be very quick, even if he's not necessarily up there like I think he will be. I think on race day, no matter where he starts from, he will be very, very quick compared to any other car out there. But yeah, that's what I think will happen. Nib, for qualifying in the race, for the top three, what are you going for?
Valtteri Bottas will take pole position, in my opinion, closely followed by Lewis Hamilton. And in third place, I'm going to go for Charles Leclerc. Now, this will be some very interesting race predictions, because why not? Let's have some fun with it. Winning the Grand Prix is going to be Charles Leclerc. I think that the who knows, the Mercedes new upgrades will affect their race pace. It's going to be hot. They'll wear out their tires. They'll have to turn down their engines. Who knows? I'm just going for wild guesses here because let's have some fun. I'll make my proper race predictions, of course, on the race watch along. And then in second place, I'm going to go for Pierre Gasly, finishing ahead of his teammate Max Verstappen in third place. See, let's have some fun. Let's make some wild predictions. So yeah, that's my predictions for the German Grand Prix. I'm sure. Hopefully, some people in the comments can come up with some fun predictions like I just have there.
Also, I just remembered I forgot to say who I was going to go for second and third. Second, I'll go Bottas, and third, I'll go Hamilton. But yeah, Verstappen, I think will win. But yeah, Nib, go for Leclerc and Gasly, first and second. That's definitely a wild one, but you never know in Formula One. But yeah, for the next 5 minutes or so, we'll come to you guys in the chat and we'll see what you guys have to say in terms of who you think will finish in where. So let me just quickly go to the first one. And then we'll read them all out before we move on to the next topic. So let me just find the first one. Cesar says quali in pole position will be Bottas, and in the race will be Vettel winning. Dexter Hall says Bottas, Max, Lewis. Jim Plus X says Deja Vu in the race, Vettel will crash at the same corner. Will F1 says Bottas will get pole from Hamilton second, Leclerc third, and in the race Hamilton will win from Bottas and Vettel. Han Solo says Hamilton, Bottas, Verstappen. Epop says Hamilton, Vettel, Max. Super Vlogger Michael says Vettel for pole, Bottas for fastest lap, Vettel to win, Hamilton second, Bottas third, Verstappen fourth, and Leclerc in fifth. Jim Plus X says mark his words. Absolutely. If that comes true, we will definitely be remembering this.
I don't think I'm even marking my words.
Wisher Boss, Hamilton, Max, Leclerc. Dexter Hall for the race goes Vettel, Max, Bottas. Who else? Shay Go says Vettel P1, Leclerc 2, Leclerc P2, Max P3. Say Regara says Pole Leclerc, then in the race Verstappen, Leclerc, Vettel, Hamilton. And Mr. Random Guy says Vettel P1, Gasly P2, and Lando P3. And then Will F1, Stroll P2 from P17. I think, let me just see if I missed any. I don't think I've missed any. No, but if you guys want to keep putting it in the chat, then make sure to do so, because we will come to you guys soon for the Q&A part of the stream. But now it's time to get into some tweets by a certain drinks company who's had a very turbulent week, let's just say that. Now, of course, last Friday on the practice review, I covered the current ongoings of Rich Energy. I just want to say, for guys wondering, I know some of you don't like hearing about them, but I have to cover this because this is actually, in all seriousness, this is actually really important to the future of Haas F1, because they, Haas don't come out on top in this. They are only going to lose in this situation because they need reliable sponsorship. So, we need to cover this because it is vitally important to Haas F1. So what we're going to do is cover all the tweets from, say, last Saturday, qualifying day at Silverstone, to about a couple days ago, because a lot has happened. And when you look at these tweets, they tell a story basically of what has happened and the situation. They tell their own stories. So let's get into them. So this is the first one where this is apparently an email sent on, I believe, on behalf of Haas. Now, this letter, you can try and read it if you want, try and pause the video if you're watching this after or right now. Basically, this, I don't know if it's a lawyer or attorney or whatever, is basically trying to find out what is going on with, Rich Energy. They're acting on behalf of Haas F1 to understand the situation so they can make a decision for the future. Again, if you want to read it, then just pause the video. And then this tweet came out from Rich Energy shortly after. Following a board meeting of Rich Energy Limited, chaired by CEO William Storey, in light of treacherous conduct of minority shareholders, The exclusive rights to distribute Rich Energy has been transferred to another company. Mr. Story retains complete ownership. So that's kind of news, but as you'll see later, it gets a lot more interesting than that. So this tweet was actually deleted by Rich Energy, and this was on qualifying. They tweeted, at Haas F1 team love Rich Energy so much, brackets, we don't blame them as hashtag better than Red Bull. They have kept our brand livery on the car even after we sacked them for poor performance. They deleted this because obviously this is an awful tweet, but there you go. And then, of course, after the two drivers collided at Silverstone, they tweeted this. And I think at this point you can basically see that Rich Energy at this point are not in partnership with Haas F1 anymore, and you'll see confirmation of that later on. Then there was this tweet later on after the Grand Prix at Silverstone, I believe. So they said in a tweet, just to disavow people of lies from Haas F1 team, please see below, Rich Energy terminated the agreement as we said. The team have accepted, contrary to their public denial. They were complicit in trying to oust CEO William Story, who even gave them a £35 million personal guarantee. Hashtag truth. And well, I think as you'll see in a moment, it's a good thing that Haas were, trying to find out the situation, also trying to secure a more solid foundation of sponsorship going forward. And then there was this tweet, which didn't really solve anything, as usual. Lobbying for the removal of the CEO, largest shareholder and founder of your title partner is, I can't say that word, something breach Haas F1 team. Mr. Story was also personal guarantor of the contract. It is like Rich Energy seeking to remove Gene Haas. Admits the noise. Let's get real. Again, a pointless tweet that doesn't solve anything. I don't know what they were trying to achieve with this tweet. I really don't understand. But then, on, I think this was Tuesday, it might have been Monday, Rich Energy were took over by a new controlling shareholder, Matthew Kell, and were renamed Lightning Volt instead of Rich Energy. Now, I don't know if that means that Haas are now called the Lightning Volt Haas F1 team. I don't know. We'll have to see once we get to Hockenheim. It would be very funny if they went, for a completely different livery and went to a lightning bolt in their car. But yeah, I don't know what this means for Haas, but it definitely means that they're going to be looking for something new. But yeah, Matthew Kell, new controlling shareholder, and William Story was basically removed from everything. Now, if you remember back to that practice stream and those tweets, you would have seen that William Story was accusing minority shareholders of trying to, organise a coup to get him out. This is basically what's happened. They've organised some sort of coup to get him out because William Story, I think it's become clear, and I don't think it's blasphemous to say this, but William Story, I don't think is fit to run that type of company, especially with as many eyes on it as there have been in the last 6 months or so. I don't think he's fit to run that company. I think the other shareholders knew that, and they wanted to take control and build a better company. And I also think Haas F1 probably did help, get rid of him because he was affecting business. And when you affect business, this is what happens, I'm afraid. And I think it's a great thing for everyone involved. But yeah, that coup that I was talking about in the practice stream, this is basically the end result of it. Then there was a tweet from the Rich Energy Twitter account saying, and by the way, let me go back, all credit to Formula Money for a, quote, world exclusive on that. Rich Energy then tweeted, William Story, founder of Rich Energy, has sold his majority stake in the legal entity of Rich Energy Limited. The decision was reluctantly reached due to the, I also can't say that word, conduct of minority shareholders or stakeholders. To quote Arnold Schwarzenegger, he will be back. How embarrassing of a tweet that is. I will say though, I absolutely believe that this Twitter account is run by him. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. No doubt about it whatsoever. So when you see this Twitter account tweeting, you can guarantee it's him. I have no doubt about that now, because the way this Twitter account talks about him, I just don't see how it's not him, because he does, and you can see interviews, he does big up himself and his company a lot, so I don't see how this isn't him. But again, as he says in the tweet, or as Rich Energy apparently said in the tweet, it was reached because of conduct of minority stakeholders. Basically, they organised a coup to get him out and to get someone else leading that company so they can, save the, reputation, or save the company in general. But the last update, which is actually quite funny, this is from a couple days ago. Red Bull are taking Williams' story to court. And then they say a cynic might see a pattern emerging. Now let me just show you what it's for. So it says there, Red Bull, and then the defendants, Rich Energy Limited and William John Story. That's his full name, of course. By the way, I'm not, doxing anyone here. They've tweeted this themselves. So, their issue, not mine. But the brief summary of the dispute is apparently Rich Energy or William Story have been using the trademarks of Red Bull, I think. So I think that's basically what it's about. So yeah, it doesn't get any better for William Story and this absolutely terrible company, and thank God they've been took over and renamed, and hopefully this company, if they are going to stay in Formula One, they can actually go, that extra mile to start building bridges and start to act like a proper company and a proper sponsor of a Formula One team, not act like a bunch of children. Hopefully they do that, but who knows? Honestly, who knows with this company? It might just be William's story that's the reason that they were acting the way they were. Who knows? But we'll see in the coming days, and we'll see at Hockenheim what livery they are sporting. Be very interesting to see. I don't think it'll be the current one that we saw at Silverstone at all. But guys, that is it for that. And now for the next 10 to 15 minutes, we're now going to get onto the Q&A and answer your best questions. So make sure for the next 10 to 15 minutes to put your best questions in the live chat and also the comments, and I'll try to answer as many as we can before the stream is over. But Nib, I just want to ask you, do you have any opinion of that Rich Energy stuff?
No. No, I don't. I'd rather not go into it, to be completely honest. I'm sick and tired of it. Hopefully Haas can just move on with what they need to do, a reliable title sponsor, and stop having to deal with an absolute pillock.
Absolutely. And again, the reason I covered that is it's not necessarily to laugh at Rich Energy or look at their tweets. It's because what's happened with them in the last week or so has a massive effect on a Formula One team. So that's why I'm covering it. I'm not covering it because, let's laugh at this company. It's, this directly affects the Formula One team. And it does, because now going into the Hockenheim Grand Prix, we don't know what the livery is going to be. We don't know what the financial situation is. We don't know what the title sponsorship situation is. We don't know if Haas are going to have a title sponsor for the rest of this season or next year. We don't know. That's why I'm covering it, because it is a vital topic to the future of Haas F1. So that's why I'm covering it. But let's now get into your comments, and we'll answer your questions for the next few minutes. Right, let me find the start of these. Seirugara, who is the best qualifier of all time? For now, I'm going to go Ayrton Senna, but if Lewis Hamilton continues the way he's going and gets to 100 pole positions, then I'd probably have to eventually go with Lewis Hamilton through just sheer consistency of being that great for so long when it comes to qualifying and producing great qualifying laps basically all the time. How do you think Leclerc will perform at Hockenheim? I think he'll be better than Vettel, but I think the Ferrari right now it's not a good car. It is not a good car. Yeah, in a straight line, it's great, but you need more than that to be good at Hockenheim. You need a good car aerodynamically also, and I think they'll definitely struggle with that on race day. But I think Leclerc, I think he'll be better than Vettel, but I don't think he'll be, seriously contending with the two Mercedes drivers of Hamilton and Bottas. I just don't see that at all. Right, let me find some other comments. Super vlogger Michael says, Chazza, but Rich Energy is a very easy company to laugh at. True, but that's the problem, is everyone's been laughing at them and taking the piss out of them, but at the end of the day, what is sad is that it does have actually very real consequences for a business and a racing team in Haas. So that's the sad part of it, I guess. Dexter Hall, what types of upgrades are Mercedes bringing to Hockenheim? Nib, do you know this? I haven't quite seen, but I think the majority of it is aerodynamic.
Yes, I believe it is pretty much a brand new or an upgrade to their aero package.
Yeah, so I don't know if it'll be every single key area, but yeah, it's definitely aerodynamics, and it'll probably be, a bit on the front wing, a bit on the floor, barge board area, and then once you add that all up, it'll be a pretty big upgrade compared to what we normally see. Sebastian asks, where is Ferrari's best chance of a win? Well, they only have one remaining, I'm afraid, and that's called the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. If they don't win that, then it's over. They won't win a race, because I think you'll start to see anyway, Ferrari are going to start concentrating on the 2020 car development. So if I was Ferrari, I would give it everything for a victory at Monza. Try and, go out there, upgrade the car so it can be great at Monza. Bring a new Spec 3 power unit so it can get pole, win the race. And then if they do, then they can say, well, even though it's been a bad season, at least we won a Grand Prix. Now let's go into 2020. But if they don't win that race, then they should go into 2020 anyway, because there's no point trying to chase a race victory when they need to start focusing on improving, the areas of the car that are weak this season, such as not getting enough out the tyres, struggling with tyre wear in the race, and also the biggest issue is the front wing. And I think definitely for 2020 you can expect Ferrari to have a completely different front wing compared to this season, because it hasn't worked at all. Has that front wing. I just missed Nico. Do you think Hülkenberg moving to Red Bull is possible? No, I don't think it is, because Red Bull are not going to take on a driver outside of their academy. It's not happening at all. So I don't see Hülkenberg going to Red Bull. Shago Go Chazza, do you think that Haas's driver lineup needs a change for the future? Also, I'll answer that kind of now. There was a person who on the community tab of my homepage, of the ChazzaHDF1 homepage on on YouTube, Matt Lumsden, I think it was, when I posted, I was going to go live today, asked about the Ocon to Haas rumours. Let's kind of talk about them now. So the rumour apparently is that Ocon is going to replace Romain Grosjean for Hockenheim. That won't happen. I don't think Haas are going to replace drivers mid-season. I don't see that happening at all. But one thing I will say is if Ocon does replace Grosjean for 2020, I would like to claim my 4D chess guess for guessing that Ocon was going to be at Haas, because I think I was probably the only person who, in my driver lineup prediction video, which you can go and check out on the channel, by the way, guys, I uploaded it about a week and a half ago. It's called My F1 2020 Driver Lineup Predictions. I think I was the only person at the time to predict that Ocon would be partnering Magnussen for 2020. If that does happen, I am claiming credit for that. I don't care. because I didn't see anyone claiming that, you know, when they were predicting driver lineups for next season. I didn't see anyone claiming that Ocon was going to be in that car. So if it does happen, then that will be, you know, incredible in terms of my guesses. Also, I got another one right for 2019. When I did my driver lineup predictions for 2019 last year, I said Albon in the Toro Rosso, and no one at the time thought that'd be possible, and a month and a half later he was confirmed for 2019. So I do have a slight knack in seeing very, you know, hard to see, you know, driver acquisitions for certain teams. I didn't think Albon would actually get in that Toro Rosso for 2019. I basically guessed when I said that for 2019. So yeah,
he guessed.
But with this, well, what do you think about Ocon to Haas, Nib? When I said it because I think he's the only good driver, properly good driver they could replace Grosjean with. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I before this dream even came out, I remember we talked about it, and I agree with you. I think that Ocon will go to Haas, not for the Belgian Grand Prix, but at the end of the season. There was rumors that had come out, or stories that had come out a couple of weeks ago, that Toto Wolff was willing to let Ocon go from his contract,
Yeah.
so that he could actually get a seat in another team. And I do see Ocon being let out of his contract because Bottas has been good enough, really, to keep his seat for at least another year. So he won't get the Mercedes seat like everyone was dreaming and thought was going to happen at the start of the season, which was very laughable. So yeah, I think that there's nowhere else for Ocon to go except for Haas, and I do see it happening.
The only other place that I've seen people predicting is Williams, but I don't see how that's
He's
going to
not going
happen.
to go Williams.
Yeah.
No.
People are avoiding Williams like the plague. They're not going to go to Williams. The only drivers that will go to Williams are drivers that are young drivers that are desperate for a chance, like Russell, like even though Kubica, of course, didn't come from F2, but Kubica was desperate for a chance, so that's why he got that seat. If Latifi gets a seat, which I think he will, he'll get it because I don't think he cares. That's the only drivers that will get into a Williams, is drivers that are desperate to get into Formula 1 or get back into Formula 1. It's not going to be a driver like, you're not going to see Romain Grosjean going into a Williams for 2020. You're not going to see it because I think Romain would rather retire from Formula 1 than spend the 2020 season at the back of the grid. I don't see why he would possibly, continue in Formula 1 if he was in a Williams. So, yeah, I think Ocon to Haas. The reason I predicted that, by the way, was because I thought Ocon would be back on the grid for 2020, but I wasn't 100% sure where. And because I thought, and I still think Bottas will keep his seat for 2020, that's the only place I see him going, because I think Haas have had enough of Romain Grosjean for sure. Right, let's look at a couple others, and then we'll come to the end of the stream. So, Sebastian asks, when will Vettel leave Ferrari? End of 2020. I don't think it'll be the end of this year. Well, I don't think it will at all.
Ricciardo and Leclerc.
Yeah. If you don't know, guys, Nib is having wet dreams over Leclerc and Ricciardo at Ferrari. I think that's pretty clear to hear,
yes,
isn't it? Yeah. But I think Vettel's the type of guy who will fulfill his contract. I don't think he'll, go and take a sabbatical out of nowhere or retire out of nowhere. I think he will probably give it until the end of 2020, and then he'll just see, what his options are, because you don't know. Max Verstappen might be on the move. That could let Vettel back into Red Bull. I don't see, by the way, Vettel going back to Red Bull if Verstappen is still there. Don't see it at all. Those two, whenever they come near each other on track, bad things happen, and they're in separate teams. So imagine if they're in the same team. It's not going to happen. So I think what he'll do is wait to the end of 2020 and just see what his options are, but I think most likely Ferrari will not be an option, nor will Mercedes, unless Mercedes can't get Verstappen. So yeah, we'll see. It's going to be very interesting. The 2021 driver lineup's very, very interesting indeed. A lot more than 2020, I think. I think 2020 it's likely to stay the same for almost everyone. Right. Let me find a final question if I can. And will F1 Ocon to Haas for Belgian Grand Prix? No. And let me find a final one. By the way, if people are asking about 2021, there is a possibility we might be covering some of those updates soon in terms of the the concepts they've gone for. So we might be covering that pretty soon. And the final comment and question goes to Ben Bailey, who asks, do you think McLaren will challenge for a podium or podiums next year or the season after? I think it is likely McLaren will contend for podiums for 2021 more likely than 2020. I think 2020, because McLaren have already come out and said that they're working on the 2020 car already and have not gave up on 2019, but they're focusing on 2020 a lot with their new team boss Andreas Seidel. I think 2020 they can definitely get closer to the top 3 teams, but I think most likely it's going to be 2021. Nib, for McLaren, do you think they'll be contending for podiums next year or 2021?
Yeah, 2021. Certainly, McLaren are going in the right direction. That is clear to see. They have the right people in the team. I was spoken about this over the last couple of weeks with Seidel, with James Key, and Zach Brown. Zach Brown has done a very good job at McLaren. I'd like to point this out once again. He has done a very good job. There's a nice, relaxed environment. The drivers are a great laugh.
Yeah.
The best chemistry between 2 drivers on the grid, that's for sure, who are actually in the same team. It's fantastic. I'm happy for McLaren. They're on the right path. They just need to continue what they're doing, and I'm sure that they will be able to do that because Andreas Seidel knows exactly what he's doing. Was so key for Porsche in their return to the LMP1 class. And yeah, I really think that McLaren will be back contesting for podiums in 2021.
Yeah, definitely likely to see that. But yeah, there you go, guys. That is the end of the podcast, previewing the German Grand Prix and look at some other things as well. Great to have you guys along as always. And thank you guys, by the way, for watching and interacting as usual. The podcasts are made, as fun as it has been today because of you guys, interacting and sharing your comments and stuff like that. And Nib, thank you for coming along. Great podcast. And we'll see you next weekend for what should be another good race at Hockenheim.
Indeed, always great to be on the podcast on a very early Sunday morning for me, which is no issue whatsoever because sport is me, and all European sport is on it in early in the morning. So thanks to everyone in the chat for coming along and asking and keeping the chat very active during the podcast. And thanks for having me on as per usual. I hope everyone has a fantastic day and week until I see you guys, or until you hear me, next Sunday for the German Grand Prix.
Absolutely. He'll be on the race watch along next Sunday with us to watch another hopefully great race. Now, before I get into, plugging all my, social medias and channel and everything, I just want to give a quick update, a channel update as to the content coming out between now and not next Monday, but the Monday after, to be honest, because, of course, after Germany, a week after, it's the Hungarian Grand Prix. We have another back-to-back like we did with France and Austria. So the next video coming out is on Tuesday, which will be a video looking at the different power units and how they have performed so far this season, how they've developed over the season, and also I'll throw in a couple stats that illustrate, who is very good at the moment in terms of, showing their the raw power from their engine. But yeah, I'm going to look at who's doing well, who needs to improve and all that stuff. That will be coming out on Tuesday. Then on Thursday, because of the, I'm going to call it success of my video on Thursday where I did a Max Verstappen versus Charles Leclerc comparison video, I'm now going to start off a series called Driver Comparisons, and the next one is coming out on Thursday, and this one will be a better comparison because it's between two drivers who are or have been seen as equal. But in this driver comparison, I will be ending the debate between these two once and for all. I think you guys will know who I'm talking about. Make sure on Thursday at 12 PM UK time to come around and give your opinions as to who is better in what areas and all that stuff. And we'll have a debate as usual. And also, I'm not guaranteeing this, don't hold your breath, but there might be an extra video coming out before Hockenheim. Probably Wednesday's the only day I can think of where this extra video will come out in between the engine video and this driver comparison video. Again though, don't hold your breath. It's not a guaranteed thing. I'm going to try and work on it, but if I feel as though I need more time to work on it, then it'll come out during the summer break. But it's a video that I think you guys will be interested in, and it does have its relevance to 2019, but also some older stuff in Formula 1. Then of course, on Friday, we'll be live for the practice 2 watch along from 1:30 PM UK time till about 3:30 PM UK time. Then on the Saturday, we'll be live for the qualifying watch along from 1 PM UK time till about 3:30. Then shortly after will be a recorded review of qualifying. Then on the Sunday will be the race watch along from about 10 past 1 PM UK time till about 4 PM UK time. Then shortly after that, a recorded race review. Then on the Monday, incident analysis for the incidents during the Hockenheim weekend. Then on the Tuesday or Wednesday, in between Hockenheim and Hungary, me and Nib will record a podcast to go out in between those two races, previewing the Hungarian Grand Prix. Then the same for Hungary, and then of course we are into the summer break. So that is the update as to content coming out. And when it comes to, content that is for sure coming out, of course, the night before in the community tab or Discord server, I'll let you guys know as to what videos are absolutely ready to come out, and I'll let you guys know as usual. But don't forget, guys, to subscribe for more content like this, because we do podcast episodes basically once a week. And every time, really, between an F1 Grand Prix. Also, just to let you guys know, this will be the last live episode of the podcast for 3 weeks, because the first Saturday after the Hungarian Grand Prix, I won't be around to do a live episode. So the next live episode of the podcast will be the 17th, 18th of August. Whatever the Saturday is around that date, it'll be that day where we do a live episode. So yeah, that'll be the next time we do that. But yeah, don't forget to subscribe. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or go to my homepage and subscribe and hit the notifications bell. Also, smash the like button to see the content continue on the channel. And also, comment down below what you thought of this video, and comment down below what do you think will happen at Hockenheim. And if you have any questions regarding Formula 1 or the next Grand Prix, then ask away in the comments, and I'll try to answer best as I can in the comments section after the video has been processed. And also, don't forget to join my Discord server, link below in the description. That's the best place, that server, for notifications of my videos and streams. And also, that's the hardcore ChazzaHDF1 community. We have about 320 people in that server. So yeah, it is quite active, and plenty of people in there that you can interact with. And also, follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110, and check out my website, ChazzaHD.com, for more content like this. But guys, until my next recorded video on Tuesday at 12 PM UK time, and until my next podcast episode, which will be between Hockenheim and Hungary, and until the next live stream, which will be the Practice 2 watch along for the 2019 German Grand Prix at Hockenheim, it has been me, ChazzaHD. Goodbye.